General Jack Keane joins us now, retired four-star general. Welcome to the program, General. I'm sure you were watching that, and I'm sure you picked up on what our president was saying about nuclear proliferation and his meeting with the Russians. What did you take out of that?
Well, first, I definitely agreed with the subjects he should bring up with Putin and nuclear proliferation being near the top of it. What's actually happening, our viewers may not understand this, but as a result of previous treaties between the United States and then the Soviet Union, we got rid of our intermediate nuclear capability, and Putin is developing that capability again against the designs of that treaty. So we have a major issue with him just on that alone. And of course, I think we have common ground with Putin in terms of global nuclear proliferation, which we see taking place in North Korea, which we see a desire to take place in Iran. And I think these two powers have common ground here to ensure that there are no other nations that acquire nuclear weapons, and we have a capability to reduce our own arsenal of nuclear weapons itself.
Does it sound like a military deal of some kind is possible between President Trump and Vladimir Putin?
I don't think there's any deal going to come out of these discussions. I think this is mostly about relationship building that could lead to something in the future. And we're going to at least put the issues on the table and get a sense of where the differences are on those issues. And I think that would be value in itself. You got to understand, Stuart, all the team around President Trump are lowballing the expectations about this conference. I think the president will come out of the summit meeting with Putin and likely say something to the effect, we had a very good meeting and we're developing a good relationship between ourselves, something to that effect. And for him, that's a good start, because that's the kind of transactional person he wants to be based on relationship.
It sounds like something similar to he walked away from the NATO summit and basically claims victory because our NATO partners are going to push in a great deal more money very quickly. I think the president is saying that's a win versus NATO.
Yeah, well, see, what the president's critics fail to see is by the president being critical of NATO members and not filling up their coffers to the expectation that they already agreed to, he is strengthening NATO. This is what Putin is paying attention to, is this will translate into more military capability. And I'll tell you what, there's so much more that we got to do, and I wish the president would talk about it. We need to have deterrence, military deterrence in Eastern Europe to stop Putin's adventurism and his desire to begin to influence and control those countries which he resents being under the nuclear banner, to be sure. And that's why he's been putting all this pressure there. This increased capacity will enable us to do that if the political and moral will is there in NATO. And I think the president will have to lead them if we're going to have more of an effective deterrence.
General, you're a military guy, but looking at that press conference, looking at our president, do you approve of his style, his entertaining style, his personability, and the way he seems to charm his audience? Do you approve of that in an American president?
What I respect about President Trump when he's dealing with issues is his transparency, his directness, his honesty. He speaks his mind. And even at times, he may be off because he hasn't remembered exactly what that is, what that issue is. Or maybe he hasn't even been briefed on it, so he just gives you his naked thought about it, and later on somebody may have to police that up. But that is not a big deal. The most important thing, I think, is, and I largely believe it's probably why he's the president of the United States, is he takes an issue, looks at it squarely, and talks directly about what that issue is and what we should do about it, and he finds his own words to do that, not somebody else's.
Well said. General Keane, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. We'll see you again soon.
All right, Stuart. Take care.